I would love to introduce our next panel. We have Sista Circle, Celebrating Black Women in Tech, featuring leaders from Meta, Google, and Bank of America. So welcome, welcome. I'm gonna give everyone's bio here. And then of course, I would love for you all to just share anything else that you wanna share to kick off this conversation. So we have Dr. China Hill, who has a PhD in social work from the University of Southern California, a MSW from the University of Southern California, an MA in Africana Women's Studies, and a BA in Women and Gender Studies from the University of South Florida. Dr. Hill is passionate about conducting inclusive research, designing equitable processes, and driving organizational strategy. Dr. Hill brings a range of experiences and expertise to Sista Circle, Black Women in Tech. Most notably, Dr. Hill is a certified project management professional, Agile certified practitioner, and Scrum master. So welcome, Dr. Hill. All right, we also have Michelle Mitchell joining us. Michelle Mitchell works at the vibrant intersection of media, racial justice, social impact, law and policy, amplifying diverse, underrepresented voices, and creating partnerships that elevate and nourish communities of color. She is an artist, an attorney, a social change seeker, and a storyteller. After years of leading high impact projects at Meta, formerly Facebook Incorporated, Michelle was tapped to launch an initiative focused on achieving equity in media representation and building deeper support for diverse, underrepresented creators, media partners, and audiences on Meta's platforms. Welcome, Michelle. Next, we have Isabella or Issa Cesperes. She is an experienced producer with a passion for utilizing sense memory to transform environments that spark cross-cultural connection and foster continued conversation. Originally from Oakland, California, Issa strives to preserve the rich tradition of the Black arts movement, bringing socio-political dialogue to her work. An artist and maker by nature, Issa is passionate about the art of fabrication, utilizing multiple techniques to create pieces centered around the transformation of materials and environmental sustainability. So thank you so much, Issa. Thank you for being here. All right, we also have Jan Lawrence, who is a data-driven strategist who formerly worked at the NBA and now Bank of America, specializing in data science to develop, implement, and recommend best practices for businesses' needs. In 2019, she co-founded RTC Black Wings, a nonprofit for Black college women breaking into the tech industry. She delights in advocating for advancement of women in technology and entrepreneurship. She is the founder of The Regime, a beauty e-commerce platform using machine learning to connect users to the right brands. And last but not least, we have my sister, Lexie B, who I have had the pleasure of interviewing her several times, and I'm happy that she's here joining us again. Lexie B is considered one of Silicon Valley's candid and prominent voices. Her thought-provoking advice and opinions on how to create a more equitable work environment stem from her own experiences working in some of the most popular tech companies. In April 2017, Lexie founded Sista Circle, Black Women in Tech, a community that supports Black women in tech companies and tech-related professions. This 10,000 plus international community has partnered with organizations such as Phenomenally, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Slack. Lexie's main mission is to inspire people to create their desired life journey by understanding their purpose and life goals. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Take it away. And I'm just going to get my notebook out and take some notes. Thank you for being here, everyone.
Thank you, Mariella. It is so wonderful to see you and be in this space this morning. And everyone, welcome to our safe space that we are creating right now. Before we start, I would like to have some ground rules for everyone listening. This is a safe space. Safety does not mean that it is quiet. So we want to see your snaps and we want to see your questions and we want to hear your thoughts because this is a very important conversation. My name is Lexie B and I'm the founder of Sista Circle, Black Women in Tech. I am a dark-skinned Black woman who currently lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. And my Blackness and my experience in the world comes from my roots as a Black person from the southern parts of the United States and rooted in the enslavement of the transatlantic slave trade. As we get started, I would like all of our panelists to introduce themselves. And when I say introduce you, please tell us your name, where you currently work, what you do, and what is your identity in this Black diaspora? Because I think that's very important for people to understand your identity and what lens you talk about as we have this discussion. So I will start with Dr. China Hill. How are you, sis?
Good morning, and thank you all so much for having me. So my name is Dr. Hill. I go by China. That's the name my grandmother gave me. I am a senior user experience researcher at Google, working in the area of product inclusion. And what that means is I do research with underrepresented groups to see how we can make our products more accessible, more available, and how we can improve that use. And then I am from the Southern United States, Florida to be exact. I identify as a cisgender heterosexual Black woman, but I am Nigerian. I do embrace that. And once again, thank you all so much for having me in this space.
Fantastic, fantastic. And shout out to Grandma China who gave you that wonderful. Okay, next person, Michelle Mitchell. How are you, sis?
I'm wonderful. It is always a good day to be in the presence of greatness. So thank you for having me on the panel. My name is Michelle Mitchell. I hail from Washington, D.C., also known as Chocolate City. I came from a deep history of just connectedness and public service, having spent some time in the government before being drafted to come to Silicon Valley. I uprooted my life and moved out to the Bay Area to work at Facebook at the time, now Meta, starting on their legal team. And now I lead a program that is focused on investing in diverse, underrepresented voices. So what I do, I would like to say, is like make a space for others and create a platform on which others can really have their voices be heard. You may have heard of We the Culture. That is one of my projects that I run, which invests in Black creatives. And we're also focused on equity across our platform and our products. So thank you.
I love it. I love it. Yan Lawrence, how are you, sis?
Doing wonderful this afternoon, actually here in New York City. I know you guys are on the West Coast, so it's still morning for you. I'm definitely happy to be here. So currently I am a quantitative analyst at Bank of America. And what that really means is I help to use mathematical and statistical methods to create predictive models and help minimize risk for the company's portfolio. I am a Jamaican native, so I'm not born in the US, but I'm definitely a Black individual here in the US. And what that means to me is identifying myself with my African Americans and also my Africans here, because I grew up in New York, where it's more diverse. And so for me, I'm growing and understanding the culture here, right? Because from Jamaica, it's a different dynamic, but still understanding that we definitely share a lot of experiences. But my mission really is to help a lot of young individuals. So I'm a new grad as well, graduated last year, June 2021. And I'm very, very much driven with helping underrepresented women in technology and helping them to get to where they need to be in life.
I love it. I love it. And last but certainly not least, Issa Cesperes. How are you, sis?
Hello, Lexie B. I'm Isabella Cesperes, or Issa. I'm hailing from Hu Chin, unceded Ohlone territory, otherwise known as Oakland, California. I want to make that acknowledgement because I think it's very important for us to acknowledge the indigenous ancestry of the lands that we reside. I am a first generation Afro-Cuban American queer gender femme activist, and I also happen to be the creative director for Sister Circle Black Women in Tech. I consider myself a tech expat. I worked in tech for many years, and sort of coinciding right before the pandemic, decided to make a bit of a shift and go freelance on my own and do work as a creative and see how I could implant myself there, while also focusing on the work that we do with Sister Circle to get more energy into actually how can we really affect systematic change within diversity and inclusion. I think there's a lot of focus on recruitment within technical companies, but there's not enough focus on what it means to actually create safe spaces. So I decided to use a lot more of my energy now to try to make influence from the outside in. So I'm really glad to be here today.
I'm glad to have all of you. So let's start from the beginning, because I know that many of the people that are on the call right now and listening in may not actually know the magic of Sister Circle Black Women in Tech. So to give context, in April 2017, I was working at Airbnb where I happened to meet Issa in the hallway. Fun fact, Issa was the first person that I actually ever met at Airbnb because one of her jobs every Monday was to say hello and introduce the space of Airbnb to all of the new hires. So she literally was the first Airbnb person that I met on my first day wearing bright blue lipstick. And from then I was like, yeah, we're about to be friends. I started the organization, not really as an organization, but as a Facebook group because I wanted to meet other Black women in tech to help me selfishly navigate what I was going through at a very much small startup at the time with a lot of whiteness and in a specific role where I was told that I have to be aggressive, but not aggressive enough. And I have to be hard and not hard enough. And as a dark-skinned Black person, I didn't know how to do that duality. So how do I keep my job and do it well? And then how do I be aggressive and get things done? So fast forward now, we are an online organization and a business of over 10,000 women having crazy conversations every day, from where can I get my hair done all the way to my boss said this horrific thing at work and how can I navigate that? And so what I want to talk to Issa first about is that when I came to her work with me in spirit, I wanted to create something that looks like Issa is the soul of our organization, and that's what she focuses on. So Issa, I want to ask you, what does it look like to create safe spaces in a virtual world right now? And how do you do that? You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think that's sort of the larger, profound question that we've all been reconciling with for the last 2+ years. I think creating community is much easier to think about when we're talking about people being physically together. I think one of the beautiful things about creating community in virtual space is that we've become much more internationally aware. I think we've become much more cognizant and connected to folks on the other side of the world. Our community is a global community of 10,000 plus women. And so one of the things that I really noticed come up was really the universality of our experiences between folks working in the UK or folks hailing from, say, Ghana and a lot of the tech stuff that's happening in Nigeria right now, or folks hailing from the United States. And although you would think we felt more disconnected, we actually ended up becoming more connected because we found the way to utilize this technology to stay in communication with each other. So I think now we're looking at what does it mean to decentralize our notion of even what is a tech hub. I think Silicon Valley may not be really the headquarters of tech anymore, right? And what does it mean to look at that and stay in community with folks who are really actually having to rely on each other to get through this whole new post-pandemic world we're living in.
I agree. So Michelle, for folks who don't know, Michelle Mitchell is one of the brightest lawyers in the world, and she just happens to right now not be doing law. But Michelle, you have a very interesting background that I know, where you're coming from this corporate legal world, then coming into the tech legal world, and then shifting into another part of tech. And so my question to you, as a Black woman, just navigating all of these different spaces, which I'm sure a lot of them have some foundational similarities, what has been your experience being the only one in the room or on the team?
That's a really great question. Coming from law, I think what's interesting about tech is it's not diverse, but we also know that law is also not diverse. Neither is finance. And so I came from a space where I was advising companies in the financial space, and I was the only one there. And when I came into tech, I was the only one in many cases. Coming into a company like Facebook, I think relationships were really incredibly important. And I actually was able to find people that could be my community within that space. Just so happens one of the people that was very deep community for me is you, Lexie. because even within that space, we were able to create that community. But I guess speaking to being me only, I think it just kind of shares with you how important it is to actually find people that are in your tribe. For me, that was, definitely people that look like me, people that also vibe the way that I vibe. So for example, as a lawyer, that's a particular vibe, but I've been drawn very much, as Isabel said, to the creative side of things. And so in many ways, I find my tribe within creative communities as well. And it's really magical when you can find both of those two things coming together in one space.
I love that. Dr. Hill, and I just love calling you that because Black women with PhDs it thrills me. It thrills me. Or China, as your grandmama would call you, as you said earlier. My question to you, because I also know that your experience in tech is pretty new, right? You recently made this jump to Google, which is like, if you had to argue, one of the tech companies of the world, right? And so my question for you is, how did you utilize a community like Sister Circle Black Women in Tech to make that transition as smoothly, or maybe as not smoothly as possible? So tell us about just that transition in general, and maybe what did Sister Circle Black Women in Tech offer you to help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I just want to preface this with being a part of Sister Circle and having that community has absolutely been invaluable to my career. When I first found Sister Circle, I was still in my PhD program. I was a project manager making about $65,000 a year, right? I was the only one. I thought of myself as a unicorn. I still think of myself as the unicorn who has found a community of other unicorns, but let's just stay on that unicorn thought, right? It was really lonely. And I was like, there has got to be something more. So I found Sister Circle. I didn't post for a while. I was in there for a while and I didn't say anything, but I started reading the stories of all of these Black women like, hey, I want to go work for here. Can someone help me? And all of a sudden you would see this flood of other Black women saying like, hey sis, like, what can I do? Send me an email. Let me look at your resume. People were just like offering their time, and these aren't average women, right? They're women who are working 10-hour days, 12-hour days, still saying like, hey, I'm willing to talk to you. Let me see what I can do to help you, and want nothing in return, right? They literally just want to see you do the best version of yourself. So I started having some informal conversations. I started talking to folks at companies, not just Google, Facebook, Amazon, all in the tech space, to really understand how my skills were transferable. And even when I didn't see it, all of these Black women said like, yes, like you can do so much more than what you're doing, and here's how you do it. So I had people look at my resume. I had people make referrals. I had people make sure that my resume got directly in front of a hiring manager. And again, these aren't things I asked for or even knew to ask for. It was other Black women who had other Black women do this, and it was like, okay, it's my turn to return the favor. And that's what I love about Sister Circle. It's like you pay it forward, and people are always paying it forward constantly, right? And a lot of the facilitation, the post, it just happens organically, just naturally. Sometimes people would just say like, how are you doing, right? And I can't say that people ask me that throughout the day, but Sister Circle will just be like, how are you today? Like, what's going on? And knowing that you have a community with so many people that have shared experiences and literally just want to help with nothing in return, right? So whether you know what to ask for, whether you don't, like Sister Circle is still a place for everyone, and everyone can engage. And I really appreciated that about that space.
Thank you. I love that. To piggyback on that, I remember last week, some woman, I forgot her name, posted something that got over 1,000 likes. And literally it was like, hey, just checking in on mental health. How is everyone doing? And I loved that. So yes, you are 100% correct. So yeah, you are a new college grad. You are, and I'll be frank, I'm old. Black don't crack, but I am old. And so in my timeline, you are definitely the baby. You're the newbie. You're the one coming up. You are the next great leader for all of us, right? And so my question to you is, as a new college grad, as someone who's young in their career, doing fantastic work, what do you need in order to succeed as this young, thriving Black woman from this community?
I think that's an amazing question, just because, like you said, right, I'm young in the game and actually learning a lot. And I think what's mostly important is mentorship, and going back to Sister Circle, a community, right? Because it's like, so Sister Circle to me, it's like being invited to the cookout, right? And of course, we're having this conversation and everyone's blunt about what the expectations are. And so you don't find that outside of community. You don't know what to expect. And so for me, it's understanding what I need to elevate in my career. When it comes to mentorship, I've spoke to a lot of executive, and to me, it's understanding what the challenges they had to go through to get where they need to be, and the fact that they're able to open up so that I don't make those same mistakes, right? And with Sister Circle, it's the same thing where a lot of the women in the group, they actually just so honest about everything, and it allows you to not make those same mistakes. And so for me, I also want to be that person, that leader, that to say, you know what, let me send back the elevator. And so you could actually make your way up the same way I'm making my way up. And so for me, honestly, it's just being transparent, right? Because just to give an example here, being a new grad when I was in university, there was no one that looked like me, especially in the computer science department. And the math department is even worse. The professors, the advisors, they were older white men. They were like in their 60s, 80s. And there was no guidance. I actually found data science, found quant analysts on my own, just did research, and actually said, hey, you have a degree in math. This is what you could do. I just had to ask a lot of questions. So stumbling across Sister Circle definitely helped me and aligned with my career goals. And so for me, it's really just, it's just learning and understanding, and hopefully I could pass that to the next generation.
Yes, and it's always, I always tell you, we are here for you, young queen. We are definitely here for you. So now I'm going to ask a question for all of you, and I want all of you to respond to the same question. I think we can sit here all day and talk about how beautiful community is. Of all people, you know that I love community, but I always tell people that we do have to have this reckoning and real conversation of why I need a community. And that's because of the disenfranchisement and the 700 years of white supremacy, where I am told every single day that whenever I walk into a space, I shouldn't be there, or that I'm disrupting it or disrespecting it because of literally what I look like. So I want all of you to take a few seconds, and I want you to think about a time that you're willing to share in your professional or educational lives when it was clear that you were negatively disrupting a space because you were a Black woman, and how it made you feel that I need to be in community with other Black women in order to get the knowledge that I have. And as you think about that, I will tell the audience, the real reason why I'm asking that is a lot of the things that we address and discuss in this safe and solidarity community, you would think that you can get this from mentors at work, right? You can have that coffee chat with a VP and they can drop gems. And the truth, and you'll find out in these examples, is that many times Black women do not get the same opportunity to have that coffee chat with the VP. And when we do get into that room, many times it is a very weird and sometimes uncomfortable conversation, because it is clear the person talking to us does not really understand our experience in the world. And so therefore the advice they're giving us may not actually work and behave in the same way if our body did it. So to start, I'm going to ask you, Michelle, when was that time in your career where it was clear you were the only one and no one else understood?
I'd have to say, one example that comes up for me is, there was someone really brilliant said, never stay in a place where people don't really see and appreciate your value. That it was a fundamental shift for me, because I recognized that where I was at that very time, despite the fact that I'm a change maker, despite the fact that I'm really, really good at my job and have always been, despite the fact that I have all of the receipts and all of the awards to back it up, that doesn't always mean that the very specific space that you're sitting, that the people that are around you in that moment actually see that value. And I think the thing that was really useful for me in that moment is sort of having a place to go, or having people to go to and say, am I insane? Here is what I have delivered, and I am not necessarily seeing the same output I'm not seeing the same recognition as my peers that may not exactly look the way that I do. And so what should I do? What should be my next step? I think that having someone to look at you and say, no, you're not insane. I see what is happening here. And let's talk about how you can transition to a place where you are valued And I can say, having made a number of career transitions and having changed jobs a few times, staying probably either 2 to 5, 6 years in each, I have definitely relied on community for those major shifts that would have a significant impact on the trajectory of my career. And it has been invaluable from a professional standpoint in terms of just having people to bounce things off of. So you make sure you're making the right decision. But I think also there's like an emotional component of it. A lot of us, maybe not having been in these spaces historically, needing to really absorb what's happening. And you can do that in community where it feels comfortable, it feels safe, and you feel like you can be your best self out in the world. So that's the story that I would share.
I love that. Yan, give us your example. What happened?
Yeah. So coming from a university standpoint, the question you asked definitely touched home there, because there was one time, I think I was asking a group of students who didn't identify as Black, a certain question, computer science question, and they kind of were standoffish. And I didn't think of it as anything, but it continued to happen with different groups as well. And so the idea, which I'm pretty sure you guys have already heard before, is that when you look at a Black person, some of them don't think that we're smart, right? And that's not the case. But we do lack the resources. And so for me, I didn't understand certain things in university, and the way I was approaching with asking questions to them, it came off like, okay, I didn't know what I was doing, or I wasn't smart. And so for me, I had to find a specific community. So I found a random community online, actually started out with Rewrite the Code. It's a community for Black women in actually college women in technology. And then I helped to co-found the Black women in technology on Black Wings. And even then it was still difficult because the white women, Asian women, they understood what it meant to apply to technical companies, apply for specific roles that matched their academic career. And for them, it's understanding what a hacker rank is. I had no idea what it was to take a technical test. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know going to conferences was a thing. Networking was a thing. And I actually went to Grace Hopper. And that's where I actually met someone who worked at PlayStation, and she told me about Sister Circle. And I was like, first of all, Black women is here, and I see that they're doing something that I want to do. And so for me, it was actually the community is where I actually found myself in technology, because I realized that I can achieve certain things. And because I was able to watch these women go through certain things and the steps they took, I then decided, okay, these are the things I have to take. And this is the equity I was looking for that wasn't given to me in university.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Issa, so give us your example. When was that time when you were like, oh, this is different because I am a Black woman currently on this team?
Well, first, I just want to acknowledge the lovely things that the other folks on the panel are saying about Sister Circle, because my heart is just like beaming out. And I just want to acknowledge, as someone who co-leads this group with you, that I'm just like, this is why we do the work that we do. So I'm just like overwhelmed. But I would say that that's been my experience my entire life. I think my experience of being like, hey, I'm the only one in the room in some capacity because of my multitude of identities is something that I've reconciled with because of the intersections of identity. I would think specifically what came to mind when you asked that question was actually the experience when I was at Airbnb, and during the period of time where we had a rash of police murders of Black people that were recorded and kind of coalescing with the murder of Philando Castile. And there was a period of week and a half or so where walking around the office, the very few Black people that were there, we all looked like a deer in headlights. And we were all on different teams, looking at each other in this building, feeling the sense of connection without anybody really being able to chat, and everybody being expected by all of the non-Black people in the building to be able to do our jobs as normal and act, as though nothing was going on in the world, and as though we weren't having to hold this multitude of grief and pain and anger all at the same time. And I went to a bathroom on one of the many floors, and I stumbled across another Black woman who was in a more senior position than I, crying in the bathroom and like sobbing. And I just held her. And it was this moment of like holding her in this bathroom. That was the only space that we had in the whole building to be able to be witness. And she didn't say much, and we didn't need to say much. And then at one point she had to dry her eyes, and she's like, all right, well, I got to go to a meeting now. And, you know, put her face back together and go back. And, you know, that is so much of what I think the experience of being a Black woman, a Black femme in tech is often. It is this like, I'm going to go cry in the bathroom real quick and fall apart because of what's actually happening in the world. But now I have to go be my authentic, perky self and put all the things back on so that I can be, you know, this picture of diversity that, you know, makes other folks feel more comfortable with not actually addressing the atrocities that are going on. So I think that, you know, that's what I really thought on when you, is that we're often, you know, the only one, but we're not actually. It is that racial gaslighting that exists, where like we're made to think we're the only one, but in fact, we're all secretly crying in the bathroom together. So, yeah.
I mean, if it makes you feel better, I've had multiple bathroom sessions. I think you've been involved in them. I know Michelle has been involved with them because I've worked with Michelle on the same team before. So, I mean, hey, bring on the tears. Do not be shy. I could tell y'all stories for days. But Dr. China, what is your example?
Yeah, so sure. So I thought about an incident that occurred in my PhD program. I was at a resource center for youth experiencing homelessness, interviewing youth about their experience. One of the youth had disclosed something traumatic. One of the staff members came in and was like, hey, can you leave the room? We are about to do like an art show in 15 minutes. And I was like, no, I need to hold space for this person. This might be the only person they've ever felt safe to tell this story to. I listened to a story, finished up the interview. That was that. The next day, my supervisor wanted to have a conversation with me and was like, hey, someone at the youth center said that you were standoffish, you were unapproachable, and that you appeared to be angry. So to put this into context, during my PhD program, I worked full-time overnight. I did a 20-hour internship, and I was a full-time PhD student, and it was a dual degree program. So it was MSW and a PhD at the same time, meaning I had 7 classes. So, and I would still get up every day, and I would still go out into the field absolutely exhausted. But she said I was unapproachable, and I was aggressive, and I wouldn't move. And I was like, listen, I needed to hold space for this person. I am a Black woman. And you know, I went home that day. It was really upsetting. And I told my therapist about it. If you don't have a therapist, by the way, I recommend that everyone does. But my therapist was like, you know, like, thank you for being angry. I'm sure that supervisor meant that you were strong. She said, thank you for being problematic, in quotation marks. That supervisor really meant they were brave. And then she was like, also, thank you for being loud, right? The supervisor meant that you were passionate. And she was another Black woman, my therapist, and those words were so powerful, right? And that's really when I understood what it means to have a community. So yes, she wasn't out in the field with me that particular day, but those words I have taken with me ever since, right? And I've been there for other Black women who needed just a safe space to fall apart, to say like, hey, they didn't mean angry, they meant brave. They didn't mean loud, they meant passionate, right? That was really when it connected to me what it meant to have a community, being 3,000 miles away from home. I didn't have my grandma, I didn't have my sister, I didn't have my mom. Like this Black woman who was a therapist, my first experience in therapy, she was all I had, right? But that really emphasized the power of community and what it meant to have someone that was going to be there for you, even if they couldn't be physically present day to day.
Thank you for that. And that's a great segue to my next question.
Lexie, you're talking, but there's no volume.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. And funny enough, that's a great segue to my next question that I wanted to ask Michelle. China, what you said about the therapist saying, when they said you're being loud, that means you're passionate. And I agree with everything that therapist said. Michelle, there are definitely times at work when we are told as Black women, we are being loud and we are being problematic and we are being aggressive. And we don't have that therapist to navigate those conversations. And also sometimes those conversations are deciding our fate, deciding our promo, deciding our money, right? Sometimes those words are literally written in our performance review. And I wanted to get your thoughts on, as a Black woman, how do you navigate that? Because as you said, and I fully support, and I love that you said it, I'm damn good at my job. And all the women on this panel, I promise you, are damn good at their job. But the purpose of capitalism is to work and make money and hopefully get promoted in that process because you are damn good at your job. So Michelle, can you give us some words to that, of when they say these words to us, like what China said, and we have to fight that at work?
Really great question. It's like an Iyanala question, really. So, beloved, I will try to give an answer. I think as a leader in tech, as just a female leader of any color, truly, you have to both be respected and liked, and not so good that you're intimidating, and not so smart that you make other people feel less than, but you have to lead in a way that people want to follow. And so truly, as a woman in tech, as a woman leader in tech, as a woman, period, in a corporate space, you have to be very cognizant of how people feel about you all the time, right? And I think it is hard to walk the tightrope if you are not pouring into yourself in other places and spaces. And so, to Dr. Hill's point, like, if you are burning the midnight oil and you are disconnected from family and you are trying to navigate a new space in a brave way, it can be very hard to show up in the exact way that everyone needs you to show up in. And I promise you, I can do it like 95% of the time, maybe even 98%, because of high tolerance for pain. My pain threshold is really high. So I can do this most of the time where everyone's like, oh my God, how are you doing it? Still doing it. But I think it's that 3 to 5% of the time that sometimes you need to just say, you know what, I'm going to be off camera for this meeting. Or, you know what, I'm actually going to take this day. And I am literally not the poster child of self-care, but I know when I hit that wall, it's time for me to take a step back and remember what it is that we're doing. I happen to be in a role that is very passion aligned. And so I don't have breaks sometimes, which means that I go for diverse, underrepresented communities and empowering voices. It happens to be the job that I also have. And so yes, in this capitalistic world, like, my job is actually to create change. So in that world, I don't have breaks. And I'd say that any advice I would have about like how to walk the tightrope is to just remember that you can't walk a tightrope if you haven't slept, if you haven't eaten, if you haven't created space to be instead of to just do. Because that we do, and we are never able to just be. And that requires us to remember the things that we do just for us and keep that space sacred. And then we can kind of show up and do the thing that we have to do, because let's be very clear, there is a bit of a box that we have to fit in or decide we're not going to. And both of those choices are fine. And I think, sometimes I'm out of the box, sometimes I'm in the box, but I definitely have to walk the same tightrope that every woman who leads has to walk. And the reason that I can do it is because I have access to community. I have access to sisters that I can say, hey, this happened. And then they said, and then I said, and then I took the day off and I came back like this, and we continue.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. So one of the audience members actually wrote this comment, and I do want to talk about it because in Sister Circle, Black Women in Tech, we talk about it a lot. I always say not all skin folk are kin folk. and what that looks like. In one of the comments from the audience, they said that I've had negative experience with people in my own community. And so Issa, as a creative director of this space, as the person who's always trying to see how can we be more safe and what can we put into practice and what policies or maybe not policies that we put in to really drive the whole, not all skin folk or kinfolk, but in this space, you must be a member of kinfolk to play in the playground. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that into the space. I think that's super important. One of the things that comes to mind that keeps coming up in these conversations is is kind of the differentiating the difference between safe space and brave space, right? And you and I, through these conversations, started having a lot of, sort of theorizing around what does it mean to actually create a brave space, because we can't actually dictate safety for any of the other women in the room. We're all coming from different places, multiplicities of identities, legacies, our own trauma, our own family trauma, et cetera, et cetera. And so I can't actually dictate what's going to make you feel safe, but I do want to create a space where people feel brave enough to speak their truth and where we feel brave enough to actually stand in solidarity, which is the second piece, right? You and I have always talked about how in Sista Circle, our mission is to be a solidarity organization, right? And what does it mean to be in true solidarity with each other, which is different than us all being friends. We don't all need to be friends. I love the idea of us being at a cookout because it is kind of like the proverbial cookout. However, even at the cookout, there's that, auntie that, you can only talk to, engage with for a couple minutes and you kind of curb your tongue and then you're like, girl, okay, whatever. And then you keep it pushing. And you know what I mean? You have your little folks within that you feel a kinship to. And so I think one of the things that we've really strived to drive home is this idea that when we're up against these white supremacist systems that are clearly, regardless of what music you listen to and what you had for dinner, are interested in taking us out, right? So when we're up against those situations, the most important thing for us to do is to be in solidarity with each other and to hold each other up and to not beat each other down. And if we can just focus on that and stop the bickering, which is also a tool of white supremacy to distract us about whether or not, somebody likes to watch Power or not, we can move on. We don't actually, that's less important because that's not paying our salaries. That's not keeping our families out of poverty. That's not uplifting us generationally. That's not securing us land, none of those things. And I think that's really, I was listening to Alicia Garza recently, speaking to the idea of what we really need to start figuring out how to do as people, as activists, is figuring out the commonalities between each other and the work that we're doing and do that work together, as opposed to focusing on the places politically where we don't intersect, because there's enough commonalities that actually need to be tended to, that if we really focus in on that and don't get distracted by the other stuff, a lot of these other issues will actually get tended to as well, because a lot of those other stressors are really just side effects of, oppression. And they're just side effects of trauma and oppression and a lack of space and of accessibility to actually heal that in tangible ways. So we definitely have a zero tolerance policy around that. And we also welcome people to bring those things to the table. And I reckon, I even remember last year, we had a whole conversation about the diaspora and really trying to understand the nuances of Black identity. And, I'm Black in the United States, I'm Cuban everywhere else. You know what I mean? What does that mean, right? To Yan's point, right? She's identifying as Black here, she's Jamaican. These things are all important, and they don't need to cancel each other out. So thank you for bringing that into the space, because I think it's really what makes this organization so powerful is to Dr. China's point, and it's just that idea of people helping each other because we're in solidarity. It's I don't need nothing in return. I just want us all collectively as Black folks to get liberated.
Amen. And to echo that, I am Black in the United States. I am not African American, and I'm Black and Blackity Black, Black, Black every place else. So yes, I fully support that. Dr. Hill, I wanted to talk to you about mental health with Black women, because I think that we can all see from our experiences, but also just from the conversation that we're having, that we as Black women in the tech industry, even with the community, even with solidarity, even people to text or call and vent to, we are holding a lot. We are juggling a lot at one time, so much so that I think sometimes when we don't have to juggle it, it's uncomfortable. And I know that you do a lot of work with mental health as a mental health professional. And I wanted to get some thoughts from you about that with Black women in tech and mental health.
Yes. So one of the things that I am an advocate for is absolutely radical self-care. And as a part of a radical self-care routine, I always recommend a therapist. I specifically work with Black women in tech for obvious reasons. And just want to point this in, like Google isn't my dream job, right? But it allows me to do the work that I'm passionate about. And those things are helping nonprofits. It's working with women who have a lot to heal from. And I feel like one of the best things that you can do for yourself, one of the most compassionate things that you can do for yourself is to heal, right? And I've also had some interactions with kinfolk that aren't kinfolk, right? And one of the things I've been able to do is say, like, I know that you're fighting battles behind closed doors, battles I know nothing about, right? And even though this isn't working, I hope you heal, right? And you'd be surprised what that does for relationships. Sis, I hope you heal, right? I am such an advocate for healing and meditation and breath work, right? Because a lot of times in our day-to-day life, there are like microaggressions that we run into. We have family obligations. And a lot of us, especially Black women in tech, we don't all come from two-parent households and $100,000 like household incomes, right? I personally grew up in a 3-bedroom trailer with my great-grandparents. And the irony of that is I literally grew up on the same land that their parents were sharecroppers on and their parents were enslaved on. There's trauma in that, right? And some of us, we get it our own way, right? Because we haven't healed from that. So I'm such an advocate of going to heal. Yes, go take that 100K salary, right? But also make space for you to heal, because that is going to be so important to your career trajectory and whatever you decide to do next. And just like as an FYI, there's some great directories specifically for Black women. There's Black female therapists, there's therapy for Black girls, and there's inclusive therapists. Please go talk to someone.
Google it. Be great.
Google it, yes.
Google it. Google it. Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, tell us more about this Black Girls in STEM organization that you started. You mentioned it a little bit, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Black Wings, we actually just finished our second hackathon this past weekend. And just to segue into that, a lot of our young Black college women don't even know what a hackathon is, and they're scared to even think of the idea of joining a hackathon, because very much like myself, when I first joined a hackathon, you have this idea that you don't know anything, and so you feel like you're not smart, and then the imposter syndrome comes in, and then you're like, okay, well, how am I supposed to join this because I don't know how to code? But then they realize that you don't actually have to have any experience. I actually got my experience through a hackathon. I learned the back end, the front end. I'm like, okay, this is so interesting, but it definitely gives you like the inside view into what technology is and how you can immerse yourself in it. And so with Black Wings, what we do is exactly that. We recruit college women, Black college women, and we help them and elevate them. So the mission is to connect, develop, and connect them with companies such as Google, Lyft, Meta. We actually work with a lot of companies, and what we do is we pipeline them into their internship programs. So what we do is we help them with the recruiting process, the interview, we help them with the ATS system. A lot of them didn't know about that. You know, a lot of them think that you have to have like a pretty resume, but like, no, sis, just make sure the words are matching. But it's the fact that we're helping them in areas that they weren't even aware of, helping them with the recruiting process. Also includes the hackathons, the hacker ranks, the code pads as well. And also the interview process when it comes to the behavioral interview, where they're not confident in themselves, because half the time when we're interviewing, we're not interviewing with a Black person. It's always someone who's Asian or someone who's white. And so myself, actually had that experience where I was actually coding for a technical interview, and the person just automatically assumed I didn't know anything within the first minute and actually took over the whole coding pad. And in that moment, I'm like, yep, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to the next round. And of course I didn't. But the thing is, we sometimes lack the confidence because the idea is that we don't know. And so a part of the interview process when helping our Black college women is also helping them with their self-esteem and helping them with their mental health as well. So we actually bring mentors in from other companies. We also bring in people that help with mental health and also help them as well to develop in their skills, because it takes us to give them the platform to learn and understand. And so as we go throughout the year, every year we recruit new students. We continue to connect them to companies and also expose them to other parts of technology, because a lot of them think it's only software engineer, but it's not. A lot of them learn about UX design. A lot of them actually take their passion and merge with technology. We have someone who realized that they actually love sports, but didn't know that they could merge sports with data, sports with the software side. So we're just exposing them to the new opportunities and ways in which they can develop and empower themselves.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. And I also know that Michelle, you are also holding space and creating a very phenomenal community and program for Black folks in the work that you do currently at Meta. And I'd love for you to take some time and tell us about it.
Thank you so much. It's what I do 24 hours a day, so I'm happy to talk about it all the time. For those of you that don't know, I mentioned We the Culture. You can find it on Instagram at We the Culture. But We the Culture is our love letter to Black culture and those that create it. Founded by myself and a few Black creatives at Meta. We basically created a community where people can access opportunities, funding, education, basically everything and anything you would need to thrive across Instagram and Facebook and our other platforms in order for Black creators to really amplify and accelerate their vision. And the first year we invested $25 million. That was the public number. It was more than that. And we supported 600 plus amazing creatives. We launched 19 shows on Facebook Watch. And we made about 120 individual content deals with different folks, from Murray Beecham to Amber's Closet to, Lethal Shooter. You could imagine we had people across the news, sports, entertainment, TV, film, fashion. And it was really just I can say it, maybe just a celebration, a jubilee, a renaissance that we were funding this. And we were able to come back and redo it for another year. So we're about to hit our launch very, very soon. And I'm really excited about that. But the whole vision is really to give people that opportunity that I think everybody always wants, which is to someone tap you on the shoulder and say, if you want to be creative, you can do that, and we will support you in doing that every step of the way.
I love that. I love that. The reason why I wanted both of you to bring that up is because at Sister Circle Black Women in Tech, we want to support and applaud all of the work that all of you are doing in all these different avenues. So do it, and do it big, and do it loudly and aggressively. And I mean it in both those actual terms. Our last question before we close, somebody from the audience asked us, and I want to ask you, Issa, is that do we allow non-binary folks in Sister Circle Black Women in Tech?
I'm glad that question was asked.
Yeah.
For sure. I saw that it said, are AFAB non-binary people allowed to join Black Women in Tech? Yes, AFAB non-binary folks are certainly allowed to join Black Women in Tech. Gender is a very interesting spectrum that is constantly evolving. And to be in solidarity with Black folks means, and to be in solidarity with Black women also means to be in solidarity with Black queer women, to be in solidarity with Black trans women. It also means to be in solidarity with Black non-binary folks and femmes. I think that is something that's a really important topic for us to dismantle as a Black community, for us to dismantle as a whole community. However, if your Black solidarity doesn't include Black trans folks and queer folks, then that's not true solidarity in our opinion. And I think that it's important for us to engage in these conversations, and we definitely welcome that. I think Lexie and I have also, in creating this community, have had moments where we've been challenged to also think about the ways that we can create further inclusivity. I think we started this group really out of a place of like, do the work that comes from your truth and your story. And so we oftentimes just try to be very mindful about speaking from our truth and our story, and recognizing that like Black women don't get enough safe space. And so that was really where the heart of things started out from. However, within that, recognizing that there is a multitudes of identities within that, and how do we nurture that? I definitely don't identify as anything rather linear these days. And I think my gender is constantly evolving and nuanced. So I think it's really important for us to continue to make that space. And I welcome folks to join and, you know, to continue to push us to really expand what it means to really create a truly inclusive community.
I love that. So we are almost at time. So I want to do a quick lightning round. I'm going to ask all of you our last question. I would love your answer. And the last question is, what are you doing to further get you towards your liberation this year? And what do you need? It's your, you know, shoot your shot round. What do you need in order to make that happen? And Dr. Hill, we'll start with you first.
Oh, that's so fast. Okay. Liberation for me, and what I am working on, is to put all Black women and non-binary folks of color in a position to win. So whether that looks like career coaching, whether that's therapy, no matter what that is, right? And I think liberating myself personally is just continuing work towards that journey.
And how do we find you? If folks on the audience want to find you, how do they connect with you on the interwebs?
Yes, so I have a website, www.chinawithany.com, or feel free to look for me on LinkedIn, CHYNA, and then Hill, HILL.
Thank you. Okay, Yan, how can we help support your liberation journey in 2022? What are you doing?
Yeah, so for me, it's really allowing the other college women in technology to have a voice as well, and also have the experience of seeing other women that look like them. And so we have posted in the group before, Sister Circles group before, but it's also where Sister Circle could come in and be mentors for our younger audience, as well as be of service to them, right? Because sometimes they just want a review prep on their resume, or they would just like to have like a nice one-on-one to learn what your experience is like. And I often get that on my LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn is just Yan Lawrence. Oftentimes I do get that conversation about, okay, what's a quant analyst? A lot of people don't know what that is, but it really is just data science or data engineering in the finance space. But if you don't know, you're just like confused, like I was in the beginning. But for me, it's also right now, my mental health is a big part of my journey this year, and just taking time to not overwork myself. And we had this conversation about, crying in the bathroom and then like wiping your tears and going about your business. And sometimes that can be very exhausting, right? Because it's just exhausting. So for me, it's really just understanding that I'm human, understanding that I have to take a break and just shut the computer off, and just take time out for myself and find myself a new therapist. So Dr. Hill, yeah, you're right on for that. But that's what I'm looking for 2022.
See, therapy matchmaking skills. I love it. I love it. Like, okay, Michelle Mitchell. How can we help you be liberated this year?
Yes, thank you for the question. I'll start with the personal. Personally, I am trying to take up more space. I'm trying to be more unapologetic. I am trying to tell my own story. And I, as a screenwriter, I'd like to finish a script or two this year. And I'm new to Los Angeles. So I am looking to build community in Los Angeles with like-minded creatives. So that's my personal, as well as heal in the process, because there's a lot to heal from. I say professionally, I am looking to hold space for Black creatives. So I take meetings with folks that have something to offer to Black creatives, and am always open to having those conversations. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. last but certainly not. Oh,
You
go
can
ahead.
find me at Michelle for the Culture.
Yes.
So if anyone wants to connect, especially I see that I'm from LA, would love to connect. Michelle for the Culture on Instagram, and I'm www.michellefortheculture.com. So would love to connect with folks on there. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Last but not least, Issa, how can we help liberate? Well, bring you closer to liberation. I think that liberating Black women is a lot more than healing. We need some policies and some white supremacy dumbed down and all this stuff. But how can we help you be closer to liberation in 2022?
Wow. I think for me, I'm focusing in a lot on the work that we're doing with Sister Circle. So I think that is actually uplifting, joining, those that have funds, I'm going to plug that one. Movements need financial fundings, benefactors. So all of those things, a lot of my work outside of just my interpersonal self-care work is really this year about focus on Sister Circle. We have some big things coming down the pipeline, and we are really going to make a huge push in the next couple of years about really what do we do with this community and how do we take this globally in really solid foundational ways that live on beyond you and our legacy that continues far beyond whether you and I are working in tech. So find Sister Circle. We're on all the things, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can join the group. Please, if you do ask to join the group, answer all the questions. We do take our safety very crucially. So we are very protective of that space. So, but please, we welcome folks to join, and all the other public platforms, please, those who are not Black identified, non-binary, women and femmes, etc. You can find us there. So yeah.
Thank you. So before we hand it off to the Queen MC herself, Mariella, I just wanted to say thank you so much for everyone who has tuned in. As you can see, Black women are brilliant. I mean, I've known my whole life, but if you didn't know today, now you know. Black women are brilliant. We come in all shapes, sizes, shades of glory. We come from all different backgrounds, have different accents, but foundationally, because of Black women, many of you here, Black or non-Black, are thriving. And so we should honor that. Have a wonderful day, do fantastic things, and remember to be a freedom fighter for someone else. Thank you.